We should be good to go. So yes, thanks everyone for the time. I know time is valuable, so I'll try to cram as much as I can into a relatively short amount of time here. So it's going to go a little bit fast and furious, but we will have time at the end for questions, as Rick was saying. So please, think about things either on the current slide or as we kind of move around, whatever. I do want to just try and get a lot of information in here in a pretty quick amount of time. So first of all, here's my contact information. If you need to reach out for anything whatsoever, please don't hesitate. Call me, email me with anything I can help with. I'm happy to do that, whether it's simple questions just about JustAddPower general features or help with a system design or anything, really anything related. Please don't hesitate. Again, our support team, more the technical support side of things, is awesome. They are one of, kind of my best friend in our company. They certainly make my job much easier. They are fantastic to work with. I don't know if anyone on the call has ever worked with them before, but they are great. They will help you with anything that you need, whether it's your first installation with JustAddPower or your 101st. They're just a super team to have on my side. So very, very much appreciative of that. So at any rate, so a little tiny bit of background on JustAddPower, just so you kind of have an idea where we come from and how long we've been around and sort of our roots of the company. We're founded by former IBM and Cisco engineers. So at our really core, at our heart, we are an IT company that happens to send video over network. So way back 25, 27 years ago, there was a need that arose where we needed to be able to distribute VGA video for government and schools and things of, those type of applications. So that's where the founders of the company came up with this idea to be able to distribute that, in standard network infrastructure, that sort of thing. And then from there it grew, of course, and now we've been sending HDMI and these other types of video signals that we'll go over a little bit later, and audio signals. For actually HDMI now for going on 11 years, I believe. So I know there's a lot of other companies that are sort of, dabbling or just getting into the space, that kind of thing. We've simply been doing it longer, have more installation, have more units out there than anybody else in the industry. So tens of thousands of units all throughout the world. Honestly, we've got distribution globally, so we are not afraid to go in really any size scope project, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later as well. One more thing on that, I kind of look at us as sort of like the analogy in sort of our industry would be like Sonos. I look at us as maybe the Sonos of this sort of category, meaning that we've been doing it really longer than anybody else. We have more features than anybody else. And that's the only thing that we do. We don't try to get into making other types of devices. We kind of stick with what we know. We do it very, very well. We do it very efficiently, and we're always updating and adding new features by simple things like firmware without having to add additional cost and that type of thing. So just really good at what we do. So please, if you haven't ever used our products, sit through this, give us a shot, and you'll be happy you did. So one of the key things that we're running into a little bit nowadays is simple video distribution. Why sort of do it in today's world? You're getting, I'm sure, more requests about having just put an Apple TV or something like that behind every television and kind of call it a day. Well, certainly that's possible, and maybe on a small scale that's, somewhat manageable. But as you get to larger scale, larger, deployments, it just gets to be more of a headache. You have a lot more connectivity, a lot more devices, maybe even a lot more long-term costs because we're paying recurring revenues and fees like that on the boxes themselves. And then in more of the residential market, if we're trying to distribute things like 4K from, say, like DirecTV, they only allow 2, 4K outputs at any given moment. So you can't even distribute 4K in a larger, even residential type system without having to distribute, centralized type of distributed audio system. So the old way of doing that, of course, the way that probably everybody has been used to is the typical matrix switch world. So everybody's, I'm sure, deployed these or at least seen these. But there's a lot of limitations in this type of, video distribution. So it's a very fixed in both the connectivity of, how everything is wired and how everything is worked. So if you need other types of connectivity, coming off of a matrix switch, you have to get other third-party boxes and devices and power supplies and all these sort of things that, again, create service headaches and troubleshooting headaches and that kind of thing. And then as far as upgrading and creating a long-term, viability and solution, it's very inefficient. Our business model is much easier to upgrade. If you put our system in, let's say 9 years ago when we started our Gen 2 product, and that customer from 9 years ago came to you today and said, hey, I'm ready to upgrade, tell me about 4K. I've got all 1080p. I want to get some HDCP 2.2. I want to get some HDR. I want to do some 4K, video switching. In our case, it's simply a matter of adding maybe a new 4K transmitter or two for some new 4K source devices, and maybe a new 4K receiver or two for some new 4K TVs, because they're probably not upgrading the entire system in one shot. So they upgrade a couple of transmitters, a couple of receivers maybe, and everything else in the system still works, is still viable, is still compatible with the current, the current architecture. So it's a much better long-term solution in that respect. And we can even take that 4K content and make it available in a 1080p world. So we can take that new 4K source device, downscale it, and send it out. And so even that 9 year old whatever TV will be able to watch that 4K content. So we'll talk about that as well in a few minutes. So it's very scalable. So the basic connection diagram looks like this. We need a transmitter for every source. We need a receiver for every display device or TV, and everything runs through a managed network switch. And that's in a typical, when we're doing matrix switching application. You can actually use our products in what we call a point-to-point, or more commonly like a balun type mode. So if you don't want to run them through a switch and you just want to plug a source device into a transmitter and a display device into a receiver, you can do that all day long. That's not a problem. It's when we start to get into matrix switching when we need the managed network switch in order to do that. So there's kind of three sort of levels of how you can use JustAddPower product. Level 1 would be point-to-point. Level 2 would be just running through a dumb, unmanaged switch. So let's say I have an 8-port switch. I can plug a transmitter into port 1. And I can plug 7 receivers into ports 2 through 8. And whatever's coming into port 1 will be displayed on ports 2 through 8. So we're not switching the video. We're just essentially splitting it by using a network switch. If we get into the matrix side of it, that's when we need a managed network switch. So it really makes it unlimited, or virtually unlimited in the size and the type of configuration. So we're not locking the customer or the project into a fixed number of inputs and outputs. It's really whatever they need today, with the full knowledge of knowing that when they need to expand that, maybe they want to add another source device later on down the road, or they want to add another display device down the road, they can do that simply by just adding another transmitter or receiver into the system. So it's very easy to grow the system, and there's really no there is a theoretical maximum that's 10,000 sources and 65,000 TVs, but we haven't run into that project so far. If you can find that, that's fantastic. We'll probably take you out to dinner or help you design it or whatever. But in most cases, you're going to run out of network bandwidth and ports in the system long before you get to our kind of max what we can do. So the largest project that I'm aware of currently, and I've been with the company about a year and a half now, has a little over 3,000 pieces, and that's in the Dubai Mall. And it has a bunch of 50-panel and 25-panel video walls and lots of video distribution, that kind of thing. So it takes a lot really to try and even get close to where we can start to max out what the system will do. The other core key things about what we do is it's standard network infrastructure. So we stick to standard network protocols. That means standard network cabling. We don't need shielded cable. We don't need high-end, Cat 6, Cat 7, whatever type of cable. If that's there, then that's fine. We'll use that. It's not a problem using it, but it's not required to do what we need to do. We work on a single gig backplane. We can run through wall plates and couplers and all kind of, wire management things that you would typically put in, to make the installation easier to troubleshoot and easier to manage. We also work with any managed switch. So this is a relatively new update. This is as of around CEDIA last year. We added the capability to work with multiple switches. And the way we do that is there's really two ways that we can route the network traffic. We can either do it through the way we've been doing it since pretty much day one, which is VLAN switching, which is really the more network savvy. If you're an IT company, if you're an IT person, if you're really versed in IT, VLANs is the cleanest way to set your network up. And that's why before we expanded it to go to our ESS, we preferred to do VLAN switching. And when we did that, we would do all that for you, all that network heavy lifting and setup and everything, if you're using a Luxel or a Cisco switch. But because we've expanded things and we're now use what's called multicast switching, which I will show you in a few minutes, and kind of the benefits to that and the downsides of that, really, we've expanded out and we'll work with really any managed network switch that's out there now. So if you get into a pinch where you can't replace the network infrastructure, then know that if it's a managed network switch, we can have you set it. We can walk you through setting it up so that we can use that. Like I said, there are some downsides to it. So I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but if you need to use it, it's an option for you, and like I said, we'll walk you through that. But really, your easy button, your easiest way to do things is to simply use a Luxel in most cases. And if you for whatever reason don't want to use Luxel, use a Cisco switch. We love Luxel because their support team is awesome. They use our products in their lab. We have their products in our lab. Same with Cisco and a lot of these other companies, but we're very familiar with what they've done, with what they do. They've sort of purpose-built some switches for what we need to give us the maximum flexibility and compatibility for all of our features. So we've considered kind of limitless HDMI distribution. There's no theoretical, there is some distance limitations. Again, standard network company, so 330 feet between any 2 points in the network. So my transmitter could be 330 feet from my switch, and my receiver can be 330 feet from my switch on standard Cat5e cabling. If I need to expand that and go further, all I need is a simple PoE injector or an unmated switch or something to give me another hop on the network. If I've got, if I want to stack multiple switches, if they have the stacking 10 gig fiber uplink between them, I can keep stacking switches and keep going and going. And using that fiber connection, we can go almost 7 miles between switches. So there's, if we're doing large campuses or we're doing multiple buildings on an estate or anything of that nature, it's very easy to grow the system and give them the capability either with fiber or standard category cable. And then same thing with the form factor. So again, we don't have to worry about running out of ports or running out of places and trying to split the signals and that kind of thing. If you've got a network connection somewhere, we can send or receive video and audio to that location. So multicast versus VLANs, this is fairly new for us. If you're familiar with JustAddPower, maybe you're not familiar with the new update. So the reason we stayed away from multicast switching for so long is because it sort of dirtied up the network. It added a lot of traffic to the network and made things very difficult to manage. And the more devices, the more things were going on, the more potential you had to crash the network to bring things down. So VLAN gets us a nice clean route to everything. Basically gives us a lane from each port to from the input port to the output port, and the only traffic that's on that port is the traffic that we create. So it lets us sort of take the rest of the network off of the network and really only put the traffic that we want to be on any particular port. And then by the same token, it frees up the other ports that we're not using for any other network traffic. So the non-VLAN out ports, the ports that we're not using, you can plug in whatever devices you want to and use that network traffic. So we're creating the lane. It makes it very easy. It makes it very easy to scale. There aren't any traffic issues. We don't have to worry about data crashing into each other, that kind of thing. Obviously, it's very easy scalable. And one of the biggest, most critical things is we get what we call instant video switching. So when you're switching from one source to another, there's no delay, there's no drop in content, there's no blue screen or black screen or anything like that when we're switching between sources. So it takes less than a half of a frame. So it's very fast, it's very quick, and I'd show you a video of it, but trying to do a webinar with a video isn't very easy to do. But so the only time you might lose video or you might get a black screen or a blue screen would be if the TV is just it's doing switching of resolutions and it's readjusting the scaling and that kind of thing. So we can do the scaling so the TV doesn't worry about that. But if let's say you're watching 2 cable boxes on the same channel, when you switch between them, it happens so fast that you don't actually see the switch. So it's very efficient. And you don't have the customer that's pushing the button multiple times on their touch panel and that kind of thing, or their remote control and getting frustrated because things aren't happening fast enough. The main drawbacks to VLAN switching are typically you have to have some pretty good network chops. You have to know how to get into the switch and set those VLANs up. You have to know a decent amount about networking and switching and VLANs and all that kind of fun stuff. When we're stacking, we're going between switches, we do need that fiber link, that 10 gig fiber connection. If you're looking at this picture, it's on the far right of that, back of that switch. So we need that in order to put multiple switches into the deployment. So multicast works in a little bit different manner. Multicast works by connecting actual IP addresses together. So it still creates sort of a lane, but it does it in a different manner. And so the easiest way to think about that would be, if I have a transmitter that has a source device plugged into it that's talking to or sending data to a receiver on the other end, if I unplug those from the ports they're in now and plug them into completely different ports on the switch, they will still communicate, they will still talk to each other, they'll still send that same traffic. So it's not port specific, it's device specific. So A little bit easier to set up. VLANs aren't, we do want to have one VLAN recommended just to kind of still keep us a little bit away from things, but it's not nearly as intensive when it comes to setup and that sort of thing. And that's why a lot of other companies are getting into the space. So pretty much everybody else that's in this space is using multicast switching because it's sort of the easy button to do what we're doing, but it's not the network, sort of savvy way of doing it. So the benefits, obviously, not as much networking chops required in order to make it happen. We can put it on almost any managed switch. We don't have to worry about whether or not the switch has VLAN capabilities in it or not. And if we have multiple switches in the system, I can either use that fiber link like we do with VLAN switching, or I can sort of what's called trunk. I can bring ports together. So let's say I need 4 gigs of bandwidth between 2 switches. If I have 4 cat cables between the 2 switches, I can trunk and I have 4 ports available on each switch. I can sort of pull those ports together to give me a bigger, fatter pipe of data between the 2 switches. So it does give you some additional flexibility depending on what types of switches you're using and how many cables you have between the switches and that kind of thing. It also gives us a little more functionality or flexibility when it comes to video walls. So we can do video walls in the VLAN world all day long. It's not a problem. But we do have a product a receiver that allow us to have multiple receivers off of one network port. So it has a kind of an in and an out on the receiver itself. So let's say I have one Cat5 going to a wall in a bedroom or whatever, and I want to put a 2x2 video wall in that room. I can do that all day long in VLAN world, and I can do that all day long in multicast world with the receiver that we have that has the in and the out. In VLAN world, though, it's going to be one image, stretched across that entire 2x2 video wall, or each TV is going to show the same image. In multicast world, I can have 4 individual images on those 4 TVs, or that kind of thing. So it just gives you a little more flexibility when it comes to that. There are some limitations of that because we're going to run out of bandwidth if we're trying to do full 4K to all 4 TVs like that. But there is a little bit of flexibility depending on, again, how the system is wired and what you're trying to do with it. The main drawbacks would be we lose that instant switching capability. So when I go from one source to another, it's no longer instantaneous because I'm completely relying on how fast the CPU and the switch is and how much data and how much traffic is on the network at any given point. So I'm going to lose the video, and it's going to be anywhere typically from maybe 2 to 5 or 6 seconds while I go from one source to the next. So not a huge amount of time, but it is a lot longer. If this customer's sitting there waiting, they may start getting frustrated, or they may wonder if the system is working or whatever. And that's with any multicasting, whether it's our devices or anybody else's. That's just the way multicasting works. So with VLAN switching, I'm not really relying on the CPU processing horsepower of the switch, and I don't really care how much traffic is on it. It's basically I'm just switching channels essentially, so the switch doesn't have to do any heavy lifting when I'm switching between the sources. So that's what gives me that instantaneous video switching. And the main drawback to multicast switching, and the way it's done with most of our other competitors, is I need what's called a controller that's on the network. So the controller is another little device, plugs into the network switch. So of course it takes another port on the network switch. So I have to account for that and make sure I have enough ports to implement it. It's another cost associated with every installation because that controller has to stay on the job site. So it has to be put in and stay there. And the most critical, drawback of that is if that controller goes down or it dies or whatever, I lose all my video switching. So it becomes that single failure point that you really don't want to have to, worry about or have to have in the system. When we do multicast switching with JustAddPower, we don't need that controller, so we don't have to have that single failure point. And it's not additional cost required. But if you look at the other guys out there and other companies out there that are doing this, most of them require that. So that's one of the main things. Either way, the bottom line is we'll make it work whether you're doing multicast or VLAN switching. If you've got a cable there, we'll send or receive video to that location. So the main feature sets with JustAddPower, and the first one here is a big differentiator between not only us and traditional matrix switching, but also us and many of our competitors out there. So in our world, if I have, let's say, a 4K UHD HDR Blu-ray that I'm trying to play, and I want to send that to all of my TVs, We can do that. We send that full signal, whatever that might be, to every single TV in the installation. And then at each individual TV, we downscale it and change the HDCP to whatever that particular TV can handle. So I never have to worry about dumbing down the entire system if, if I'm watching, let's say 4K content in the living room, I want to get up and make a snack in the kitchen. I go and turn the kitchen TV on, it's 1080p. In a matrix switch world, I'm going to lose video in the living room while everything re-handshakes and negotiates. My family's going to be mad at me because they're trying to watch a movie and I've just disrupted that whole watching experience. And when everything comes back and re-handshakes again, I'm going to be at 1080p in both locations, or whatever the lowest common denominator is. So in our world, that does not happen. We make it very seamless, very easy. We never lose video when another TV turns on somewhere else in the house or somewhere else in the project. In matrix switch world, that's the way it works. So that has to happen. And really, in many of our competitors, that's the same thing, even the ones that are doing video distribution through a network. So not everybody is handling the HDCP and the scaling up and down like we do. So using our 4K products, our 4K receivers, we'll change it to whatever that TV can take. So we can mix 480p TVs, 1080p, 720p, HDR, non-HDR TVs. Everybody's going to get the best possible signal that they can handle. Instant switching, we covered that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Video walls, that's all built on our platform as well. So we don't need additional hardware. We don't need additional software, anything like that. It's just part of our platform. So if you want to do video walls, that's all built in. We can rotate the video walls in 90-degree increments. So I'll show you a little bit later when we talk about mosaic video walls. A lot of our competitors can't do rotation, so that helps us do mosaics. It also helps us, so let's say we're doing a 2x2 video wall, and the TV we're using has a little logo across the bottom of it. In a typical environment, we're just watching a single TV, that's fine. But when you put another TV above it, now you got that logo, between the TVs. In our case, we can flip that image, we can flip that TV upside down, and now the logos, aren't showing in the middle of the screen and that kind of thing. And our video wall, we don't have any kind of limitation on the configuration of it. So we can do, well, I guess we kind of do. We can go up to 16 TVs high by 16 TVs wide, but it can be any configuration therein. So it could be a 1x16, it could be a 8x4, 12x3, whatever you want to have it as. A lot of our competitors, you're fixed to like a 2x2 or maybe a 3x3 type of configuration. Once I have video wall set up, I can come in and out of that video wall mode into any kind of screen, grouping that I want to have. So if we look at this top image, maybe I've got a 3x3 video wall. That bottom right corner is a 2x2, and then I've got singles all around it, or I can have one image stretched across all, and I can pull it in and out of those very dynamically by the control system. So it's very easy to manipulate that and come in and out of different video wall modes. And we also can, when we set up video walls, we can compensate for any bezels and gaps and things like that. So if you do have larger bezels, we can, as long as you've got nice accurate measurements, we can take those into account. We can hide the video behind those bezels, or we can jump over the bezels so that none of the video is lost. So depending on the application, either way, you can, and again, you can pull it in and out of those different modes based on what you're trying to set up. So that's all set up via our little web GUI, and again, you can pull it in and out of those things as well. So very easy to set up and very easy to control those. Here's a nice little kind of a fun little project that we did a few years back, where they use video walls. This is at the Cincinnati Red Stadium, so it's a stadium, beautiful stadium. But since it's a stadium, you got these gigantic columns that are holding up the grandstands and seats and all that. So the integrator wrapped the columns in video walls, and since we can compensate for that corner, if you will, and that gap, it's a seamless transition when things are going on. They also put a 3x6 video wall in there. And kind of the fun thing about this project, or one of the fun things, is that it started with JustAddPower, just in this little addition, this little restaurant sort of area. And the facilities manager liked the way it worked so much that we ended up in the rest of the entire stadium. So it gives you kind of an idea how the system can grow. So now we're on the balconies out there, these little TVs. We're in the owner's suites and the boxes and things like that. We're in all of there's got multiple video walls in the concourses, multiple restaurants. So it just kind of, again, gives you a testament to how the system can grow and scale based on the needs. As far as, again, rotation with video walls, we can do things like this. We're seeing more and more of this where we're doing a mosaic video wall. I'll run the video. I don't think it's going to come through very well, but we can take into account all of the TVs and the sizes and that sort of thing, and the bezel, the gap bezels and that kind of thing, and create one continuous image. Or we can come out of that, and a lot of times what they'll do with these vertical panels that you see here is they'll turn that into like digital signage, menu boards, things like that, and kind of come in and out of those those modes from video wall to singles or any combination thereof. So as display devices are getting cheaper and cheaper, and companies, and it's particularly in commercial applications, want to do something kind of special and interesting at the foyer or the lobby or whatever it might be, rather than having a fish tank, they can have, fish one day and fruit and the beach and whatever they want to have other days. So it makes it a lot easier, and the price points on that are coming down significantly. We also have a feature called Image Pull, which allows us to be able to pull real-time JPEG images, put those on a laptop or a screen or a two-way touch panel or whatever it might be. So we can take up to 10 frames per second and do that. So it's not quite full motion video, but it's pretty fast. The main hurdle you're going to run into when you start to do this is the speed of the control processor and how much data it can handle at any given moment. So in most cases, the control system is going to pull maybe 1 frame a second or 1 frame every 2 seconds. Certainly enough for the end user to know what's playing at each TV or what from each source, so they can decide whether or not they want to switch it before they switch and that kind of thing, but not enough to bog the whole system down. So we call it Image Pull. We have also kind of the reverse of that called Image Push, which allows us to overlay an image either on a live screen. So maybe if they want to run like a digital signage type of thing, we can load that and save that into the receiver. Or the most common way that this is used is for when we lose video. So this actually, the request came to us from a casino that had all these TVs in the casino. And if, let's say, the cable box died, they didn't want a bunch of blue and blank screens all over the casino. They wanted to have their logo automatically pop up and do that. So we can certainly do that. We give you that option in our software when you go to load it, set everything up for the first time. We can either have different images for every single TV, or we can have the same image on all the TVs. So what a lot of times it's used in a residential application would be maybe like the phone number for the integrator or their logo, or maybe the phone number for the cable company or something like that, because, hey, nobody ever has problems with cable boxes. But some way that the customer knows that, hey, the control system's working, the TV's working, my video switching is working, it's my source device that isn't turning on or isn't, working properly. So it can be used for troubleshooting that way. We can also do what we call Image Pop, which is an overlay logo in the top left corner of a screen. Very useful in commercial applications. We can set transparency on that, and basically so that the venue is doing constant sort of subliminal messaging and advertising, similar to where you'd see on ESPN or ABC or whatever logo in the bottom right. The company can put their logo in the top left. We can also share the network port, which not everybody is able to do this either. So if I need to plug in other devices at the TV side of things, I can put just a dumb unmanaged switch in there, plug that into my receiver, and plug my TV HDMI to the receiver and my TV's network port into it. And now I can get the TV outside to do Netflix and those kind of things as well. We actually made that easier with a new receiver that came out last year that has 2 network ports on it, the one I kind of described earlier, an in and an out. So that in and out can be used for video distribution, or that in and out can be used for just network distribution. It's also PoE. So if I want to put a PoE WAP or a PoE switch or a PoE control device at that TV location, I can use that new receiver that we came out with last year to do that as well. Long distances, we kind of covered that. So I can go up to 7 miles. I can tunnel under mountains and things like that, apparently, if you look at the graphic here. But anyway, so if we're doing fiber between the switches, we can stack them and go almost 7 miles, or I can use fiber between my JustAddPower devices. So if there is fiber network infrastructure or fiber infrastructure already there, then we can use that. You just need a fiber to RJ converter, and you're good to go with our devices, or use fiber to fiber between switches. We can also distribute USB through our network. So if this is, our devices are a la carte. So you buy exactly what you need as far as connectivity and that kind of thing goes. So you're never stuck with sort of a one box solution. So if you need things like USB connectivity, you buy the transmitter and or receiver that have that. If you don't need it, you don't spend the extra money to get that. We don't try and sort of lock you into our one form factor, hope it has what you need. If not, too bad, so sad kind of thing. We have lots of different boxes with different types of connectivity. USB lets us do things like this. So let's say I have a wireless keyboard and mouse in a conference room location. Ultimately, that's going back to a head-end somewhere that has multiple PCs or laptops or whatever that are in a rack or in a server closet. I don't need, in this case, I wouldn't need 3 wireless keyboard and mice. I just need 1, and we can route that based on whichever computer screen or computer I'm trying to talk to at that conference room. So it makes it more efficient. It makes it easier to route that traffic. I can also use it for things like wireless touch screens and things of that nature. So all the Nike factory stores use JustAddPower. They use these multiple touch screens all throughout, also actually video walls. But the touch screens allow the end user to go up and design a shoe or design clothing or whatever, things like that. That's all ultimately going back to a computer, and they're using the touch screen capability to communicate USB 2.0 over to that. So USB 2.0 is for KVM switches, wireless keyboard mice, things like that. We cannot distribute USB 2.0 video. So we can't use it for like video cameras and things like that, but any type of peripheral device we can use. We can also overlay real-time text on the screen. So if you have let's say a third-party control system, and maybe you're the customer's in the master bedroom, they turn on the TV, they've got the in-ceiling speakers playing. So whenever they hit volume up and down, it's not the TV's volume bar that's giving them the data. It's the two-way feedback coming from the two-way amplifier that's doing the distributed audio. So we can overlay text. It can be any size, any font, any color, or things like that, or just kind of digital signage type thing if it's more of a commercial application. We also support CEC over IP. And I know most dealers stay away from CEC because you've got weird things that happen, right? So you turn on a Blu-ray player, now the TV's turning on, and you didn't necessarily want that to happen. In our world, though, it works quite well. It works quite reliably, and it is a friend of yours. So in JustAddPower land, we only send the CEC commands that the control system tells us to send. So nothing happens randomly. Everything happens the way you want it to, and it makes it very, very easy if you're just using the TV as, say, a kind of a dumb display device. So if I don't need Netflix, or I don't need any of the web applications, things like that, I just need the TV to turn on and turn off, or maybe switch inputs. CEC is an awesome way of doing that. If I have, let's say, a restaurant that has 30 TVs in it, 10 are Samsung, 10 are LG, 10 are Sony, it's all the same commands. I don't have to worry about the different commands. It's one HDMI connection to the TV. I don't have to worry about an IR, emitter that's going to fall off later on down the road, or getting RS-232 to the TV, or putting it on the network, which is going to create other headaches down the road when it does a firmware update or something weird like that. CEC, simple, easy, works, reliable, predictably, and it's a really cool way of doing things. So don't be afraid of it in our world. We certainly support that on all models. We can do that. We also have RS-232 built into everything. So if we want to do RS-232 control at the source end of things or the TV end of things, there's a little mini connection for the RS-232. If you need the mini to 232 cables, we will give those to you free. We simply don't send one out with every device, because then you'd end up with a whole closet full of RS-232 to mini cables that you don't need. But if you need them, we will send them out for free. Then you can charge $100 or whatever to your customer. So RS-232 is certainly capable. 232 can be used in a few different ways. We can either use the actual RS-232 connection from a control processor, let's say like my RTI or whatever. Let's say I want to control those 30 TVs again in that restaurant. I could either use 30, physical RS-232 ports from my control system to do that, or I can do things virtually through the network. So I don't need any RS-232 ports. So either way, the most common, the easiest way is to actually not use the physical 232 ports on the control system side, but we do need them on the endpoint side at the source or the TV. So either way, we can do that. As far as infrared over IP, we can convert. So we do have a little accessory device we affectionately call the flux capacitor, because you can see that little Y shape to it. That will convert that RS-232 port into an IR port, so we can control either, again, a TV or a source device via IR, and just use that little adapter to do that. The adapter comes with all the cabling you need. It's powered right off of the transmitter or the receiver. I don't have to worry about external power supplies, anything like that with it. It comes with an IR flasher. Comes with everything you need to basically make it work, and those drivers are built into all of the third-party drivers for our third-party control systems. If we need to downmix and de-embed the audio signals, we can do that as well, either at the source end of things or at the receiving side of things. At the source end, we can actually take and downmix Dolby Digital to give you an analog output, and then still send multi-channel audio out to your, to the rest of the system. On the receiving side of things, Dolby won't allow us to do downmixing at the receiving end, so there it needs to be an incoming 2-channel signal. But if we need analog audio at the TV location for, let's say, a sound bar or something of that nature, then we have receivers that have it. If you don't need it, again, you don't spend the extra money to get that feature. We can also pass all the high-res audio formats, Dolby Atmos, DTSX, True HD, DTS Master Audio, those sort of things as well, to go to an AVR and give you that control. Dante is our newest audio format that we just added with some of our new products that we introduced at InfoComm. So if you're not familiar with Dante, Dante is a beautiful, easy way to distribute audio signals over a network. So it's kind of what we do, but with audio only, and it's a standard, so all Dante devices communicate with each other automatically. So you could plug in, let's say, a Dante JustAddPower device in with another Dante QSC or Yamaha or whatever it might be. Something that has a Dante port on it. There could be, mixing consoles, speakers, amplifiers, all those sorts of things. Plug them into the network. They recognize each other. They already recognize the capabilities they each have, and then we can take the audio and send it throughout the network. So it's a very easy way to scale and to distribute audio over large networks, over large venues with multiple channels. So we're using the latest, greatest Dante chipset, which is known as the Broadway chip. It supports up to 192K signals. It's the lowest latency of any Dante chip. It's a 1/4 millisecond latency. And our devices are, what it is we have a Dante transmitter. So it has an HDMI input on it, and it has 2 network ports on it. I'll show you a picture of it a little bit later. But basically, let's say I plug in a cable box into that transmitter. I can now send that cable box audio and video to every device in the JustAddPower network, just as we normally would do. But I can take the audio from that cable box and dump it onto the Dante network so that any Dante speaker or Dante amp or Dante device can then pick up those audio signals and play those back. By the same token, if I have a Dante source device somewhere in the network, so maybe I have a Dante mixing console, I could bring that audio from that mixing console into the JustAddPower network and dump it to my other JustAddPower devices. So now I can watch that cable box and listen to the Dante audio signal. So very flexible in what it can do. And again, we're using the latest, greatest chip that has redundancy and those sort of things built into it. HDR, as I mentioned early on, we can mix and match HDR based on what the display device can handle. So we can take that HDR signal in from the source, distribute it to every TV. And if the particular TVs can't handle HDR, we simply turn the HDR flag off. They still get picture, they still look beautiful, but the HDR TVs get their native HDR signal. We also have some wall plate-based products. So again, more products in this category than anybody else, giving you the type of connectivity and the type of form factor you need. So we have rack mount-based transmitters. We have wall plate-based transmitters with different types of connectivity for more your conference room and boardroom type situations. And so one of the key features based off of that is what we call plug, play, present. So very simple installation could look something like this. I've got and this will work with any of our transmitters and receivers, but in this particular case, since it's a conference room, I'm showing you the wall plate one because that's probably more likely it's going to go into the conference room, either in the pop-up or maybe in the wall of the conference room. But let's say you could also take one of our regular transmitters, place it under the table, and have just an HDMI cable coming through. At any rate, this particular transmitter has both VGA and analog audio as well as HDMI. So any laptop that plugs into it, I've got a receiver behind the TV. I don't necessarily even need to go through a network switch. I can just have point to point here. I can go Cat5 from transmitter to receiver. So either way, either point to point or run back through a switch, we can make this work. But and also it could be one TV or multiple TVs. It could be a video wall. It doesn't matter. Somebody comes and plugs their laptop in. We see that video signal from the laptop. And based on that, we hold, basically there's 2 macros we can hold in the transmitter and the receiver. One is a power on macro. The other is a power off macro. So plug your laptop in. We see that video signal at the transmitter. We tell the receiver, hey, we've got a video signal. Turn that TV that you're connected to on. And we can turn the TV on via RS-232, via IR, via CEC, or even via IP. So turn that TV on or turn that video wall on. When I disconnect my laptop, turn the TV off, or maybe switch it back to another input or whatever you need to do with it. So very simple, very easy solution that doesn't require a third-party control system for these very basic type of installations like this. If this is part of a larger JustAddPower network, then let's say you've got multiple, things you can watch on that TV in that conference room. I can still set priority so that when somebody plugs in to the local source, we take over and we go to that local source. And then when we unplug, we go back to whatever was being played before, whichever receiver or transmitter was being watched before. So very cool, very easy. And it was a simple firmware update that we just pushed out about 1.5 years or so ago. As far as control goes, we have a relatively recent update as well for that. It's called Switch Please. It allows us to take any web interface and turn it into a control platform. So it's for basic video switching control. So it will not replace a full-blown control system or anything like that. we're not controlling the endpoints, we're not controlling the source device, and we're not changing channels, things like that. But we are doing simple video switching with a little web application, a web interface. So works on, it doesn't matter if it's PC, Mac, Android, iPhone, whatever it is. Open up a web browser, type in an IP address. We show you everything that's connected to that network. We can hide and show devices that you don't want to see. So if you don't want to see certain source devices or certain TVs, you can hide those down. You can rename everything to a common friendly name. Use most for just simple video switching, if maybe it's a conference room type of thing where you don't need a full-blown, necessarily a full-blown video system or control system, or more for troubleshooting as well. So if you're setting up your third-party control system and you're trying to see whether or not things are switching properly, in our world it's very easy to see. And then if you're still not getting switching through your control system, you know that it's something in the setup of the control macros or the IP addresses or something of that nature. So it's free, and it was a cool little thing to add and to do that that sort of thing with. We do also have licensed drivers for all the major third-party control systems. So those are all on our website. You can download those. Some require a license key. It's up to the manufacturer whether or not that happens. The license key is free from us. You just have to email us the MAC address of the system, and we will get that to you. All kinds of drivers for all the major third-party control systems, commercial like QSYS or residential like Control4, RTI, those kind of things as well, and work quite well. And there's actually one that I kind of usually highlight, which is pretty cool for really commercial bars and restaurants. So if you're doing those, you need a very inexpensive, very easy to use, very quick to set up control platform. DTV Game Control is a pretty cool one, and they have a recurring revenue model. So your front-end upfront cost for the bar or restaurant owner is very small, but you get recurring revenue because every 1, 2, or 3 years they have to up the contract for the software of DTV Game Control. So you're back in front of that restaurant or bar, and you're talking about upgrades and adding more to the system and that kind of thing. Very simple to use, driven by an iPad, doesn't need a central control system, takes advantage of the metadata from DirecTV, so you can very easily see whatever genre, let's say basketball, or in this case, one of the screens is baseball. You can hit the little baseball icon, see what's playing. You can pull in an image of the layout of the bar or restaurant, so it's very easy for anybody to pick it up and go, hey, I want to go to this TV at this table and switch it to this source, and simple to use as well. So some of our new stuff we introduced at Infocom, just to kind of give you the little run through on that. Dante, we pretty much covered that, but here's the connectivity on that Dante transmitter. So it has an HDMI in and out, so I can loop through let's say my cable box again that I'm plugging in there. I can plug that in. It's now distributed to the JustAddPower network. The audio is distributed to the Dante network, and I got to loop through to plug that HDMI directly into an AVR, something like that if I want to do that. And again, by the same token, that Dante port can receive Dante audio and dump it back the other way onto the JustAddPower network, and that's done dynamically. So you don't have to set it one way or the other. You can change that up based on the control system or based on how you're using the Dante controller. We also introduced fairly recently HD SDI transmitter. So if you're doing things like broadcast type cameras and maybe like a church or a house of worship, something like that, we can now take that video signal, dump it onto the JustAddPower network, and any TV that has a JustAddPower receiver can now receive that. So it's a very easy way to bring that type of signal transmission into the JustAddPower network and distribute it all throughout very easily and very quickly. We also introduced an HD TVI transmitter as well. So if you've got TVI transmit or cameras that you want to dump those into the JustAddPower network, we can do that very quickly and easily as well. Same type of connection for that. We're doing the HD TVI, so we can go 1080p, we can go long distances with it. We also have USB capability here, so if we want to take, and maybe it's a PTZ type camera, I can pass that PTZ data through USB from the camera back to the head end and do the controlling that way. Another new one that we just introduced, and I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to read through all this, but it is our point-to-point transmitter. So as I said, kind of at the very beginning, any of our devices will work in a point-to-point mode, so we don't need to have a switch in between them if you just want to use them as a balun. And we had enough people, enough dealers using them that way that we actually came out with a point-to-point transmitter. So if we're not using this particular transmitter, if we're using any other transmitter, we have to power both the transmitter and the receiver. So we can either plug power in through the little power in port. Incidentally, when we're going through a managed switch, everything is PoE, so you don't have to worry about power typically with our devices. But in a point-to-point mode, if I'm not running through a switch, I have to power them up somehow. So I have to power the transmitter and the receiver, either by plugging local power into each one, or plug them into an, just a dumb PoE switch. So in this case, we came up with a point-to-point transmitter. This sends the power to the receiver, so I don't have to worry about trying to power up to the other end. So it makes it easier to manage, behind the TV, and not having to worry about finding a wall wart or something like that to plug the receiver in. And I can actually power up to 4 receivers on the other side of this. So we do have that one receiver that has the in and the out. So take one Cat5 and basically split that signal to 4 TVs on the other end and power all 4 of those receivers from one transmitter. So it's reliable, it's predictable. That's why guys use our devices like this, because it gets them off of job sites, it gets them out of trouble. If they, you've tried XYZ balun and back to the job site multiple times, changing out baluns, changing out HDMI cables, changing out sources, trying to do all this troubleshooting that's costing you time and money. Take any of our transmitters, any of our receivers, power them up, or in this case, use our point-to-point one. We don't have to worry about powering the other end. Plug them in, get paid, move on to the next job site. One of our newest, or one of our other accessory devices I want to cover real quick is the tiling transmitter. So this works to give you multiple tiles on a single screen. So sort of the reverse of a video wall. So we'll take one TV or projector or whatever it might be, split that into multiple images. These are our default views. We've got 1 on the top, 3 on the bottom, quad view, and then 1 on the left and 3 on the right. But you can take it and you can create any type of view you want to with it, with or without transparency, picture in picture, scaling those into different sizes. You can even rotate those. So if I have like a vertically mounted panel, I can split that into 1, 2, or 3, 4 vertical arrays. If I want to say not stretch my top image, not get the aspect ratio off, I can create that as a preset. If I want to give somebody multiple tickers, so maybe you've got somebody that likes to watch news and sports and a weather ticker, I can take those 3 tickers, put them on the bottom of the screen, and then squeeze a 4th image, above that kind of thing. So if you've got somebody that likes to kind of watch multiple things, we can do that as well. We can overlay them on top of each other, so that's not super practical in that instance right there, but in this one it is. So if we want to have, let's say, a front door camera, I see motion at the front door, so I've got a camera in VR feed. Whatever TV's on at the house at that moment, give me a pop-up overlay of that front door camera feed. You can set transparency that can kind of see through that. So once the tiler is in the system, any and all TVs can see it. So it doesn't have to be just the big screen TV in the theater. If I'm in the bedroom late at night and there's motion at my front door, I can pop that image, that image from the front door into my master bedroom zone, or do the tickers or anything like that. Obviously, the larger the screen, the easier it is to see depending on how far away you're sitting. But it's available to every single TV, and you can even have multiple tilers. So if I wanted to take one of those tiled images and split it into 4 more, all I need to do is add a second tiler in the system. And we actually had a fairly recent project that went out that had an 8-foot by 20-foot LED video wall, which we're seeing more and more of those, of course. So it's one big giant 8-foot by 20-foot TV essentially. And what they did is they put 5 tilers into the system. So they can take that 8 by 20 image and split it anywhere from 1 to up to 16 different TVs. And since there's plenty of real estate to do that, it made a lot of sense. It's very cool. Once you have a tiler, you don't have to worry about being the only tiler. You can tile within tile, do all kinds of fun, cool stuff with that. Even put it on a video wall too if you need to do that. The flux capacitor, that's our other accessory device. We kind of covered that. And then our last accessory device is our rack shelf. So we do have rack mounted transmitters that are 1U high, give you either 3 or 4 transmitters in that 1U. Or if you want to vertically stack any of our transmitters or receivers, really, if you wanted to, you can put those in fits in a nice clean slot and get that for nice wire management and rack installation. So last couple of things I want to cover real quick because we're out of time is how do you set one of our systems up? If you're doing the VLAN switching, it's very, very easy. If you know how to program remote controls, you're going to find this is like the easiest thing you've ever done. If you know how to really do anything on a computer, you can do this. But anyway, you need a couple things. One is a USB to serial adapter. That way we can talk to the switch. Another is a console cable that will come with your switch, and it is a Windows-based Windows-based program. So you need a Windows-based computer to do it. So you download the software from our support site. It's free to download. You can download it if you want to right now or after we get off this call. You can't really do much with it if you don't have our devices or a switch to talk to, but you can certainly download it. Download the drivers as well, either from the third-party control manufacturer or right from our website. If we need to give you a license key, just email us the MAC ID and we'll give you that as well. Here's kind of the list of the Luxel and Cisco switches that we're compatible with our software at the moment. So stackable, non-stackable, plenty of ports and that kind of thing with it. But as far as configuring it, here's how it works. Set up a new system. So we select that. The next is, how do we connect to the switch, either through the router or not through the router? You hit next after that. What type of, which COM port am I using, wired or wireless? I would recommend wired. Which network adapter am I, sorry, and then which COM port for that USB to serial adapter, Luxel or Cisco switch. We'll fill out the username and password for you. Hit next. We're going to talk to the switch real quick just to make sure it is a Luxel or Cisco. We're going to log back out and go, okay, how many sources, how many TVs, how many transmitters, how many receivers, meaning that, which type of network classification you want to put the JustAddPower network on. We don't care. Pick one. You can even do a custom one if you want to do that. Hit next. Now we're going to do all that network heavy lifting for you. We're going to set up all those VLANs, make it nice and easy, make it nice and quick for you, so you don't, again, have to know anything about VLANs or how they set up. We're going to do all that for you. Once we finish, we're going to show you a picture of the back of the switch and tell you where to plug your devices in. We don't care, what model transmitter or receiver you're plugging in. The transmitters have to go into the first set of ports, the receivers go into the next set, and then the remaining ports that are there in yellow are for whatever you want to plug into them. Port 1 is always reserved for the control, so that one we never plug our devices into. I would also say if you think the system may grow, then go ahead and leave yourself some room to grow. So if you think there might be more transmitters than you actually have at the moment, add some more in here, add some more receivers, maybe max out the switch if you want to. That way, when you come to add a new source or a new TV, you're just simply plugging in and giving an IP address. You don't have to rerun the software or anything like that. Anyway, plug our devices in. Make sure your HDMI devices are either unplugged HDMI or just powered off, the source devices. We just don't want any stray HDMI signals coming in while we're trying to configure. Transmitters only. You don't have to worry about unplugging, behind the TVs and that sort of thing. And then now we're going to go out and find all the devices on the network. We're going to give you a readout of what we found. If there's a problem here, if the device should be there that's not showing up, check the cabling, check whatever, make sure it should be there, and then rerun the scan again. We also, after you hit next after that, we allow you to update firmware, upload your own background image if you want, like your help screen or your logo or whatever to come up on all the receivers. If you want to do a firmware update there, we'll walk you through that and show you if there's a problem or not when we do the updates. We'll update all the devices in one shot here, and so it's pretty quick. The updates take about 3 minutes for the first device and about 30 seconds or so for each additional device. So obviously it depends on how many devices you're updating, but it's a pretty quick process. Then once it's done, we're going to give you a final result of that, show you your final IP addresses, how the system is configured. We're also going to export that to a CSV file or an Excel file, so you've got a backup of that that you can leave with the customer's file or whatever you need there, with all your IP addresses. And this is the values that you plug into your control system, so we know how to switch things. We're also going to give you something critical here called a static route information, and that's the last sort of piece of the puzzle that you have to set up in your switch, and that's so that your switch knows how to talk to our devices. So we give you that information right in that printout, but basically this is so that my RTI or whatever my control system is can talk to the router, which then can route that data to my JustAddPower network to do things like 232 and CEC and IR and whatever kind of video wall modes and that sort of thing. So that's it. Again, if you know how to set up a control system, you're going to have no problem setting up our software. But if you do have some kind of an issue with it or whatever, then our support team will walk you through whatever you need. So a couple things, speaking of support, we do have demo kits available. If you'd like to borrow demo gear, it is free. We'll send it out to you. It consists of 2 transmitters, 2 receivers, all the network gear that you need. All you need, and 2 source devices, as a matter of fact. So all you need is 2 TVs, and that's how you can, show the video switching and that kind of thing. So it's good for either demonstrating for a customer or playing around with the control protocols or playing around with your control system, tying it in, that kind of thing. We'll send it to you. So just if you need that, let me know. We'll get that out to you. If you want to purchase gear for yourself for demo purposes at a discount, we do that directly through us. So that would not go through AllNet because we don't expect them to take the hit on that. But you can buy up to 20 pieces and it'd be 30% off of dealer cost. So it's not for resale. It's for your demo purposes. So maybe for your home use, for your showroom, things of that nature. It's a simple form you fill out, send to us. We'll give you the demo gear and then to keep, and then everything else you buy through AllNet. We also have what we call a case study program, which is a cool way to get eyes on a particular project or projects. It's totally free. In fact, we'll send you 4 pieces of our gear as kind of a thank you for transmitters or receivers or a combination of both. And it goes through our PR firm. We just need a basic information about the job. There's a PDF form you fill out with some images and some basics about the job. Then our PR firm will reach out to you, kind of get more details if necessary. write it all up, get your approval before it goes to print and or goes to online publications. But it goes to, we just had one actually come out yesterday. So it goes to all the major publications, all the major, commercial integrator, CE Pro, that kind of thing. And of course, you get recognized for it. You get your name in print and all that. We get some recognition, of course, as well. So it's just a win-win. So if you want to have that discussion or anything like that, if you got a project either currently or coming up, it doesn't have to be in any particular size or scope. We'll help get some eyes on that and get you some free advertising out of it. Just a quick list of some of our real-world project examples. So we're in lots of very, very large applications, whether it's a stadium or an airport or a newsroom that's got hundreds of TVs and that kind of thing, or anything in between. These are all real-world applications we're in, theme parks and that kind of thing as well. We also have examples on our various social media pages. If you have something you want to link to as well, then please reach out to us for that, and we'll help you get some advertising there. Last couple things, warranty. Everything now has a 5-year warranty. We actually upped this as of March 1st of this year. Prior to that, it was a 3-year warranty. Simply put, we weren't finding problems with our gear. So why not add a couple more years to the warranty? Cool things about our warranty, it's full 5 years and it's advanced replacement for that entire 5 years. So you don't have to worry about getting, used gear or have to send gear back to get it serviced, anything like that. We'll ship, standard shipping is ground. If you request overnight shipping, we will overnight you a product as well. We'll also send a prepaid shipping label. And if we know the IP address of the unit and the firmware version of the unit, we'll actually send it out pre-programmed to wherever it needs to go. So best case, easiest case scenario, you've got an end user that's fairly familiar with the system, or maybe you can FaceTime or whatever. You have a problem with the unit, we'll send it. It'll show up on their doorstep the next day. They take it out of the box. You FaceTime them, tell them where to go to the rack or behind the TV, unplug the old device, plug the new one in, boom, everything's working again. Don't have to worry about reprogramming anything like that. And again, that's for the full 5 years. So we stand behind the product. We don't have, we have hardly any, true hardware failures. So it's very easy for us to offer that type of a service with our units. And that goes with current units that are, anything that is in our current product catalog that you've got out there. Even if you've got something that's from our current product catalog that was installed before March 1st of this year, we'll still honor the same warranty for those devices as well. And then last but certainly not least, training. If you want some hands-on training with our support team, with our training staff, it's awesome. I hear nothing but great things about it. I've been through it, of course, as well. It's really hands-on. You get your own little system, you get your own demo kit and all that kind of thing to work with. The gentleman that heads it up is an ex-physics teacher from high school, high school physics teacher. So he really knows how to just talk, and get things in common terms. It's not required by any stretch of the imagination. Most dealers, don't go to the training, but it's certainly offered and it's free, and we highly encourage it. If you come in, the way it works is you come in on a Wednesday, we take out a dinner Wednesday night. Training is all day Thursday, half a day Friday. We then go to lunch. If from there you want to go back to the airport, we provide transportation for the whole thing. We'll take you back to the airport on Friday. If you want to stay through the weekend, we'll provide the accommodation through the weekend as well. We put you up at a hotel that's right at the beach, so you can turn it into kind of a mini little vacation, have some time away, bring family in, whatever you want to do. All that's highly encouraged. It's in Tampa, Florida area, so we're about an hour and a half or so from Disney. Beautiful, some of the best beaches in the world, golfing, all that kind of fun stuff as well. So please, if you want to do that, please take advantage. One kind of weird thing about it at the moment is we just moved into a new building last weekend, literally. So we're resetting the new building. We went from, 3,000 or 4,000 square foot building to a 27,000 square foot building. So, we're trying to reset everything. So the trainings are normally done on a rolling basis throughout the month. But because of our new move, we're probably not going to get trainings ramped up again until mid-September. There are 2 levels to it. There's a level 1 and a level 2. After you've completed level 1, you can come back to level 2 and get the more troubleshooting and video tiling and that kind of thing. But in either case, they're both free. Once you get to the Tampa airport, we'll pick you up and provide everything else. After we get the new dates announced, I will send those out so everybody has access to those as well. I just don't have them as of yet, but again, it'll probably be mid to late September when we get ramped back up again. So that's all that I have. I know we ran a couple minutes over, but now it's open for Q&A. So as long as you want me to stay on the line, I'm more than welcome to do that. So yeah, we'll kind of go from there. I don't know what we have as far as questions go.
All right, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I was muted, so we'd have a good presentation. So yeah, we do have a few questions pop up, but one of the things I just wanted to touch on is you mentioned the 2-day training course in Florida. So I went through that
hmm
last year around this time of year, which July in Florida was fun. It was actually it was very enjoyable because you're a block from the ocean at the hotel that they
Yep.
put you up in. So it was absolutely gorgeous. So if you guys know kind of the Tampa area, or not Tampa, what is it called?
It's
Um,
Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater kind of area. It's
yeah,
all one
Clearwater.
big
That
sort
was
of,
exactly
yep.
what I was thinking. So it's Indian Rocks Beach, a little bit. It's like the nice air, super nice area, and they put us up right in a hotel. Literally, I walked out of my hotel door, and within 5 minutes, I was on the beach looking at the ocean. So it was beautiful accommodations, and it's well worth the investment to go down there. Um, Also, one of the things I wanted to note is that AllNet owns one of those demo kits. So the demo kit that Brian just spoke about trying to coordinate getting the demo kit sent out. So we own a demo kit. We've got 10 states and 4 locations. So it bounces around a little bit. So if it makes sense, we'll bring in one of the JustAddPower owned kits. But for the most part, we can accommodate demos and things like that pretty quickly. So talk to your AllNet sales representative or whoever your primary contact is at AllNet to arrange getting that demo kit out to you if you need it. So, all right. And then
Awesome.
let me see. So I got a couple questions here. So Jerry was asking about um, can the receivers act as a quad video processor to a single display, basically the opposite of a video well. So I think Jerry's asking about the tilers that you reviewed, and I believe his question came in before you talked about tilers.
Uh,
So Jerry, if you
yep,
need if you
yep.
need additional information, let us know. Brian, you want to go back and review the tilers real fast?
Yeah, yep. So that's exactly what it does. So it'll take any screen or all screens in the project and split them into with one tile. We can split that into up to 4 images, but it doesn't need to necessarily be 4. It can be 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it's all dynamically driven by the control system. And it picks up any 4 sources. So it could be 4 different cable boxes, or it could be a cable box and 3 Apple TVs, or in all that's being driven by the control system. So yep, very easy to do, very easy to deploy. And it's kind of one of those devices that once somebody sees it, it's like, oh, I got to have that kind of thing. So it's if you've got showrooms out there and you want to get a demo deal on it and put one in the showroom, I highly recommend it. But yeah, that's kind of how it was the reverse of a video wall, exactly like that. So yes.
All right. Um, Jerry also asked a question about your very first case application scenario that you mentioned, which is using a dumb switch and setting up one transmitter, multiple receivers in an application similar to a distribution amp. Um,
Yep.
will the receiver still be able to do scaling per display slash output if there are dissimilar displays?
Good, great question. Yes, they will. Yep, that's all set up per receiver. But yeah, that's another great point. If you're just doing simple video splitting kind of distribution, not matrix switching, then yeah, we can do that, and you can put in all the 4K receivers at each TV. And so if it's a 4K TV today, it's going to get what it needs. But if it's a 1080p and they upgrade it to 4K later on down the road, then you don't have to go back and replace hardware. But yeah, great question. And yes, that's all set up per receiver, whether you're in regular matrix switching mode or you're doing simple video splitting through the switch.
Okay, and then per our training and some practical experience. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when any of the displays that are dissimilar from the source input, so if it's a 1080 source and a 1080 panel, it's instantaneous. But if it's a 4K source and a 1080 panel, or a 1080 panel and a 4K source, if those panels happen to be within line of sight for another, there can be a slight delay as that one scales and then syncs, correct? Or is it still pretty
Correct.
instantaneous?
Yeah, that's all really determined on how fast the scaler is in the TV. If it's doing the scaling, if it's doing the conversion from, let's say, so if we're just sitting, if you have our let's say our transmitter set out to output the native resolution, so maybe it's kind of getting different resolutions as you're going from, let's say, cable box to Blu-ray player. If that TV is having to adjust for that resolution change, then that you may lose video for a split second or whatever while the TV does the scaling, if you will. If you've got our receivers to do all the scaling, and we're set to a fixed output, so which in the case of a 1080p TV it would be, then it would be instantaneous. So it kind of depends on if the TV has to do anything with the video signal or not, and if it does, that sort of blank screen or whatever is completely determined by how fast it can handle that change. So in a 1080p world, it would be, if we're sending 4K, let's say, to a 1080p TV, it would be instantaneous because we're always going to be scaling everything automatically to 1080p. So it happens really, really quick. But in some cases, to your point, it may depend on how fast the TV can do that.
Okay. And, not to disparage multicast, because A, JustAddPower offers it, and B, we have multicast solutions as well, up and down our line card. But the even if it's doing any scaling, if you're using JustAddPower in the traditional VLAN implementation, it's still faster than a multicast switch. Switching
Absolutely.
time.
Yep,
Okay,
way faster.
Right.
Because even in multicast, you're going to have that multicast switching time, plus you're going to have that video resolution scaling change time. So you're going to have the two of those aggregated together. You know what I mean? So however fast we can do it, regardless of whether we're scaling or who's doing the scaling and the resolution changing, that's going to get added to both the multicast and the VLAN. So the multicast is just going to add more and more seconds. And some of the switches out there just aren't. And that's another reason we like the Luxel switches for this. Their CPU in their switches is faster than most of the other ones out there, especially the less expensive ones. So even in a multicast mode, it's going to be, instead of being, let's say, maybe 5 seconds, it's going to be 2 seconds you might lose video. So.
All right. And follow up from Jerry. He said, awesome. Thank you very much for the descriptions. So Jerry, thanks for participating in the webinar today. So Bill is asking.
Thanks, Jerry.
Bill's asking for the recommended external power supply for the transmitters and receivers.
Well, that's a kind of a loaded question in our experience anyway. So everything is PoE. So if you're running through a PoE switch, we don't need any power supplies. And we used to actually, before we switched over to PoE, we supplied the power supplies with each device. And then one of the main reasons we got away from that is because we got bit by the power supply bug. The partner that we partnered with for the power supply, for supplying our power supplies, ran into a bad batch of them. So it's really anywhere from 4.7 to 23 volts. And our take on it is you buy pretty much whatever power supply you want. You probably have power supplies sitting around from other devices that died, but the power supply is still good or whatever. So almost any power supply you plug in is going to power up the transmitter or receiver. I do actually have a list, I believe, on our support site of some links to some recommended ones, but it gets tough for us because we don't want to be in the power supply business, number one, and number two, if we recommend one and then say there's a problem with it, then it just kind of makes it a little bit. There's a stain on us for that, even though it's out of our control. But if you go on our support site, there is a list of sort of recommended ones you can go to. But literally almost anyone you've got sitting around in your warehouse or your van or whatever, you'll plug it in, it'll power it up, and it'll be just fine. So
okay,
hope that helps.
Also, we can use PoE injectors as well, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. PoE injector, unmanaged PoE switch, power supply. So there's multiple ways to do it. And again, that's another reason we like Luxel is they. On most of their switches, all the PoE ports we can use. So they're not. So a lot of switches have, let's say if it's a 24-port switch, it might have 12 PoE and 12 non. In Luxel's case, that's essentially not. I think until you get the really small ones, you can plug anything into anything, and you're going to power it up, and it's got plenty of power to power, our devices and multiple of them at that.
All right. We're not done with Jerry. Jerry's got a follow-up question. On the transmitter side, is there any way to import an H.264 stream input into JustAddPower aside from using like some sort of a de-embedder or decoder to do that?
Currently, no. I don't know if that's something that's being worked on or not, but currently, no. We would need some kind of traditional video connection for that, whether it's HDMI, the most typical one, or like SDI, TVI, or whatever, maybe even VGA, I guess, if you had that type of converter. But currently, no, not a native way. We do need some kind of external plug, from an external device that's already converted that to a connection type that we can actually handle. So.
Okay. So Jerry, what you're looking for is something similar to the Dante, where you just you've got an IP address or something like that, and then you just map it, and then you tell it to decode. Is that what you're looking for? Instead of having for
I
camera.
think
Yeah,
some of
he
like the
says for
digital
camera.
signage players and cameras and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
he said
That
specifically
is
it's
a
for
request that we.
cameras. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's a request that we have received multiple times. So I know it's on our radar. I don't know if it's something that we can physically do, or or what, exactly where we are with it. But I know currently it's just not possible. So, but we're always looking at it, and we're always adding new. As you saw earlier, we added in the last 16 months or 18 months, we've added, I don't know, 5 new devices, 5 new pieces of hardware. So we're always adding stuff. So it's possible, but not current.
Okay. Okay. So Jerry's follow-up says, yeah, it's definitely for conference room situations, government situations, etc. So there there are format converters that exist. I want to say Pelco, and there was another kind of the old guard blue chip CCTV companies that had those converters, but they're not inexpensive, and they're obviously it's a very purpose-built device that has no flexibility to use in any other circumstance once it's designed out of the system. Um, okay. All right. So Bill's asking a follow-up question. Well, he's got two. JustAddPower literature. Is there hard printed literature, or are we restricted to printing PDFs ourselves?
We do have product catalogs. In fact, we just got new ones for Infocom back in June, and we do have some. So we will get some out to you, Rick, and then you can distribute them accordingly. Or if anybody wants to email me their address or whatever, I'll send out a catalog or two that way as well. So we do have some. We've got more coming at CEDIA. That's what usually when we do our really big bulk print where we get a bunch of them. So we'll have a lot more to distribute at that time. But yes, we did just get some here in the last couple months, let's say, and it is available. But it's a catalog that has everything in it. We don't do the single sheet cut sheets. It's a catalog that has all devices in it. And since we're always kind of updating, that's part of the rub on trying to do the catalogs is, like I said, we've added at least 5 new devices over the past 16, 18 months. So we've had to reprint the catalog multiple times for that as well. So it just kind of, I guess, to be a little bit of a headache that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's always a snapshot of an ongoing line.
Yep.
All right. So
Yep.
Bill's got a follow-up question here about HD SDI. So you've got a dedicated box for HD SDI, correct? We just talked about that earlier with the TVI box and the SDI box. But
Correct.
DisplayPort would still go through a traditional HDMI box, correct?
Correct. Yeah, you need transmitter.
Okay.
Yep.
And then that SDI transmitter will transcode, and it'll display on any HDMI receiver anywhere in the system, correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we basically take that signal, convert it to what we need, and then everybody can get it.
Similar to how historically we've been able to put analog VGA through the VGA transmitter and transcode that and put that on any of the HDMI outputs. The
Correct.
HDMI receivers
Yep.
at the displays. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So Bill, if you have any further questions
well.
on that, let us know. Yeah. That we, I believe we still stock. We still stock it. Oh, I wanted to share that. So here's how JustAddPower works at AllNet. We've got a select JustAddPower mix at all branches, but we deep stock at our headquarters in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. So if you've got a large project coming up, let us know a few days ahead of time. And so JustAddPower has tremendous inventory in Florida. And then also we keep inventory on hand as well at the AllNet branches. And like I said, we keep a larger supply at Elk Grove Village. And Elk Grove Village is 2 days away from any of the AllNet territories. So we can supply these products pretty fast. I mean, usually they're not a surprise, but sometimes if you need something for a service, or you need something for a really quick upgrade, the customer wanted to do 10 panels, and then lo and behold, they're going to do 15 panels. let us know. We can fill it. All right. What was the next thing I wanted to
Like
talk
those
about here?
customers.
Yeah, I do too. Um, so we talked about the Tyler. We talked about scaling in a distribution amp mode, literature, H2.64, and we talked about the HDSDI. Okay, I've got a real quick question here about Dante latency. So you mentioned that the chipset that we're using, this Broadway chipset, is 1/4 of a millisecond. So that's insane. It's insanely
Yeah.
fast. So in the Dante
The
platform,
just
go ahead.
I was like, to give you a point of reference with that, the previous chipset was a 1 millisecond, so they cut it down significantly. But we're at the mercy of the the chipset that they essentially supply. So it's insanely quick, and much quicker than it used to be.
Okay, so I don't have a lot of experience with a lot of Dante, but I went through the Audinate training program, and I would recommend that to anyone. It takes maybe an hour and a half to go through that, and then you get your Dante certified certificate.
That's a great point. I should add that to my slides. That's a great point. Yeah, it's just good
free.
general knowledge, and it's easy and it works.
Yeah, and they talk about latency. So one of the things that the question that I had here is, if there is a video on the same zone as, let's say, you're going into, you mentioned QSC, which we're now distributing at AllNet. You go natively right into the box through the Dante input, and again, it's all IP address mapping. So you send a Dante signal from a JustAddPower system into a QSC, and there's any latency there. Is there a lip sync type delay? How do you manage lip sync on a display where there's video and audio in the same zone that aren't being handled by entirely within the JustAddPower ecosystem?
I don't remember. I have to look at the specs. I don't remember if there's an AV sync setting on. Normally, like when in the transmitter that we do the Dolby Digital down mixing and has the audio out and all that kind of thing. We have we can adjust for lip sync. We have an adjustment in that because we could potentially have it because we're doing a D to A conversion, a DSP conversion kind of thing. I don't recall if there's a setting like that in the Dante piece. I'll look that up as well. I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if that's something we can adjust for, or if you have to adjust for it elsewhere. If that's it might be in Dante controller. I remember it's been a while since I've been to the Dante training.
There's definitely some adjustment within Dante controller, the app, or the the browser or whatever. But I was asking about if we could also manipulate the lip sync on the video side as well. If we have to delay video to match the audio, if the audio has latency just because of the bouncing around through the network or bouncing around through like a DSP engine or something like that on the audio side, that could add latency.
Right.
It's not just the delivery of the signal, it's also what happens after the signal gets there. If it goes through a DSP, DSP latency. So,
yeah, typically the bulk of the delay is done by the display device is adding scaling and video manipulation and color enhancement, and that's what's adding the visible, where you actually see and hear the difference. So if you put it in like a game mode or turn all that stuff off, then that should typically take care of it. But I'll see if there's anything else we can do in our device. I don't think there is, but there might be. I'll check.
Okay, cool. All right, and then let me see. Oh, is there so in multicast, when we were talking about the VLAN, the traditional JustAddPower implementation that we've had for years and years, you mentioned that we can scale it out to hundreds and hundreds of sources and hundreds of displays. Is there a realistic cap to where we want to stop doing that with multicast and maybe flip over to a fully VLAN network stack?
Really, you're gonna run out of network bandwidth before kind of anything else. So let's say the transmitters are what take up the bandwidth. The receivers, it doesn't really matter how many receivers. The transmitters kind of start taking the bandwidth. So you're going to start, but with multicasting, since we can do either fiber or we can do trunking to link them and give us more bandwidth. I suppose there's more flexibility. In fact, I know there is, because the number of source devices goes up when we go multicast. So we can actually do more devices in theory with multicast than we can with VLAN. But I don't, in either case, there's not really a practical limitation on our end. You're going to run out of on the switch side of things before you run out of anything else. And so some of those, like that, one of the charts I have on how many devices you could have in a Luxel or Cisco environment, the max number of those is really based on the bandwidth of those devices when you're stacking between them and that kind of thing. So if anything, if you start to run out of bandwidth for whatever, if you do get near that sort of maximum, multicasting is actually going to give you a little more flexibility, because we can trunk, or we can fiber between them, and we can send multiple streams down one category cable as well. So there's different. It's easier to kind of divide up the data with multicast than it is with VLAN. If that makes any sense. So
sure. Okay.
But if we get anywhere close to that, that'd be great. That'd be a fantastic thing for Luxel and whoever and us and whatever. But it just, from a practical standpoint, I don't think the integrators are gonna have to worry really about hitting those kind of numbers. If they think they're getting near it, reach out to us and we'll help them lay it out and make sure we've maximized the infrastructure that's there, the cabling and or the switches that are there, or whatever they're trying to put in.
Yeah, we're happy to support that in the best way that we can. And the best way that we can at that level is to hand it off to you guys. But yeah, we've got JustAddPower certified staff at every branch now. So
very
like
nice.
I said,
Thank you.
Last year, we've got I want to say 8 people have been through. Eight of our staff members have been through JustAddPower training. Might be more than that. But anyway, yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
then obviously, yeah, we would love to work on projects like that. Those are POs that are exciting to see. Let's see. I think we're at the end of the questions. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type it in the questions tab really fast. Other than that, we're wrapping up. We went a little long, so thanks everyone for staying with us. If you have any additional questions, Brian, is your contact information up? I got my questions tab all over the presentation.
I can put it up real quick. So yes, please.
Perfect.
Reach out. Don't hesitate.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to Brian. If anyone has any questions about anything on our side, reach out to me, rick.murphy@allnetdistributing.com. Or if you'd like to reach me by phone, you can call the Troy branch at AllNet, 248-817-4888. So, or call your local branch if you're not in the Michigan market. All right, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. What's that?
One more thing from me. Can you also send me your full contact info? I don't think I have it. Just so I have it. Thank you.
Oh, I think that's for the best for everyone. Sure. Yeah, I'll text you right now. So, all right. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to follow up. This presentation should be up on the archive channel. Give us about 7 to 10 days. The guy who normally does all the uploading is moving, so he may not be available to do it within 24, 48 hours like we do sometimes. But we'll have it up shortly, and we'll have it available if you'd like to share it with some of your staff. So if you have any questions on anything, feel free to give us a buzz. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
We're going to end the webinar now.